welcome to the November Plymouth Zoning Hearing Board meeting. Please rise, say the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. So we only have one item tonight, and that is the Outback. And Mr. Solicitor, do you have anything to add?
No, I can read it for you.
Yeah, you go ahead. Great.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Yeah, we have no speaker system tonight.
Oh,
So,
okay. I
to
thought
speak a little louder, I'm just using my phone as a recorder. So.
All right, I'll do my best. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This is a request for an application for a special exemption from Plymouth Township Zoning Ordinance Number 342 as amended, Article 16, Section 1601.C.3.A, and a variance from Article 16, Section 1601.C.1. Special exception requested as follows: to allow 1 square foot of sign area for every 2 feet of street frontage in excess of 100 feet, but not to exceed 135 square feet. The variance requested is as follows: to allow the total sign area on any 1 street frontage of a property in single and separate ownership involving a business shall not exceed 65 square feet. The property is located at 322 Ridge Pike in the Commercial Zoning District. And Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, I can enter the exhibits at this time as well.
That'd be great.
Okay. I've identified 4 exhibits that were included. ZHB 1 will be the applicant's application. ZHB 2, a letter from Alpha Consulting Engineers Incorporated dated October 18th, 2024, containing 2 pages. ZHB 3 is the site plan for Outback Steakhouse rebuild by Alpha Consulting Engineer Incorporated, excuse me, dated April 4th, 2023, containing 1 sheet, which is sheet number 4 of 15. And ZHB 4 Outback Steakhouse sign package presented by Sean Crawford, dated August 16th, 2023, containing 11 pages.
All right. Mr. Murphy, the floor is yours. You want to explain to us?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a brief history. As we were talking earlier, the Outback in its current form started in about 94, 95. It was previously a golf shop. And at that time, we renovated the property to accommodate the Outback Steakhouse restaurant.
His name is spelled and have been sworn into the record.
Okay.
Say your full name, please, sir.
John Murphy, M-U-R-P-H-Y.
Raise your right hand, please, or do you solemnly swear or affirm the testimony about the James Truth and the truth
I do. So a couple of years back, during the COVID, they started doing some rebranding and updating some of their older restaurants, of which this is one of them. And this in particular wasn't one of their current restaurants, even with their old standards. So and there's no sprinklers. There's a lot of nonconformities there. So it was time to upgrade this. They took a look at it, and the only way to do it properly was to do a total scrape and rebuild. It wasn't possible to renovate the building and meet current building codes, fire safety, etc. So in the last, I guess, 9 months, 10 months, we submitted a land development plan showing the plan you have before you, as your solicitor mentioned. The site plan is part of the land development plan. It's been approved by the township. And now it's time for us to update the sign package, either to be reflective of their current branding. So what I'd like to do, and obviously the application speaks for itself, but I'd like to kind of walk you through it and then go through the special exception and variance that we're proposing, and then answer any questions, if that's all right, Mr. Chairman.
Very good.
So first of all, there's a pylon sign that exists on the corner. First I'm going to give you an explanation, then I'm going to go through the more legal stuff. So there will be a new pylon sign that will be installed, and that's on page 3, which most of the signs are. If you want to take page 3, if you would please, of the application. And I do want to point out that they have 2 versions. They call it right and the left. So when you see on page 3 the 4 elevations at the top of the page, west and east are actually transposed, and so is north and south. And the reason I point that out is because when you're looking at it from the street, you're looking in a northerly direction. Okay? So if you look at the lower right of those four elevations there, the south is actually the north elevation. It's a typo. So I wanted to point out there's no signage proposed toward the residences in the rear. I think that's an important point. So on the right top is the south elevation, which is the view from Ridge Pike. So that shows your standard signage there. And there's also, you can't see in this plan, but they have a tiny little thing. If you look at the lower right hand of page 3, they actually have a little 7.5-inch high thing that shows the proprietor, Dan Wood. Okay, that's just kind of a minor thing. So on the front, you're going to have their standard Outback Steakhouse shown at the top there. And then there's a little proprietor sign. Below that, as I mentioned, is the rear with no signage at all. Trying to be respectful of the residential neighborhood to the rear. Going to the left-hand side of the page, the east elevation is how you'd see traveling west on the Ridge Pike. We didn't feel there was any signage necessary for that because of the pylon sign and the signage in the front. The west elevation is what you'd see along Linda Drive there, and that shows the typical Outback Steakhouse sign. And also their branding they did a few years ago, obviously it's an Australian theme, we're all aware of that. And then that's why you have that Australian kind of logo there. It's kind of a logo like you'd see when you see a Toyota dealership, you see the bullet, the same type of thing. There's no verbiage, but it's part of their branding. It's an Australian theme, as we all know, for many years for Outback Steakhouse. The pylon sign is going to be upgraded. It's within your height restrictions of 20 feet. So kind of the middle at the bottom is going to be the Outback pylon sign. They'll be the same location it currently is on the corner of Linda and Ridge. Okay. So that's kind of the signage in general that we're proposing. Now I'd like to refer to the letter that your solicitor mentioned, the October 18th letter to Mr. Rowe, and talk about what we're actually applying for. And the letter kind of explains what a little more detail from the application that was also part of the package. So under 1601C3A, okay, first of all, your base signage is very minimal, as I'm sure you've had many applications in this commercial regard. It's only 65 square feet, very minimal signage for commercial. The special exception allows you to go to 135 square feet, okay? And that's if you have more than 110 feet of frontage. We actually have about 160 feet of frontage on Ridge and about 280 on Linda. So meeting with Mr. Rowe, he suggested we submit kind of a combined special exception and variance, which I'll get to in a second. So that takes us to about 135 square feet with the special exception, okay, application. So page 2 of that letter is kind of the key to the application. So once again, work with Mr. Rowe. What we did is we took the base 65 feet, okay, that's allowable without any relief from this board, and we just added some of the signs together. We have the pylon sign of 52 square feet, a takeaway sign, which is going to be on the west elevation where the people come in. It's a curbside too. People don't come in. When you pull up, as many restaurants now, they bring it right out to your car. So it's a typical takeaway situation. And that little proprietor sign of 1.5 square feet that we mentioned on the front. So then there's 3 signs that correspond to the variance request. And those are the 2 signs on the south and the east of the building. And that, south and west, excuse me. And that's the typical signage of 72 square feet, the red Outback, and then the white Outback, the white steakhouse beneath it. So that's on your, back to page 3, the upper right and lower left of the 4 elevation views in your packet there. And then the larger by square footage, but it's not, in our opinion, it's not really per se a sign, is the Australian map. And that's a larger map there, and that's about 159 square feet. So all in all, what we're asking for is relief of approximately 300 feet for the main Outback Steakhouse signs, both on the front and the side. And that's the application that we are submitting for your consideration this evening. It's a combination special exception variance. We did talk to Mr. Rowe and looked at the research, and we feel we're in concert with some of the other variances have been granted sign-wise on this commercial corridor. So I feel it's a concert with what this board has done in the past and also what's necessary for proper signage for a commercial enterprise or restaurant of this size. So that's kind of my Reader's Digest version of what we're here for. We think it's reasonable for the rebuild of the restaurant, get people in and out and specify what their branding is. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, got a board question. Marty, any questions?
Any questions? I just want to say it was a very thorough presentation. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
No questions.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Yeah, I have two questions, Mr. Murphy. Is there any potential impact of the signs lighting on traffic along Ridge Pike?
I don't think so. They're backlit, so there's no like spotlights or anything like that. It's kind of a soft lighting. So we don't anticipate any issues with traffic being annoyed or having any glare or anything of that nature.
There's not going to have like any moving text or any like refreshing,
No, sir.
any of that kind of stuff?
No, sir.
Will they be turned off after a certain hour?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think they're generally lit. Is there any restrictions to lighting? Time-wise?
Nothing I know of.
No, and that's part of the reason I mentioned the back facing the residential properties, there's no signage. We didn't want to impact the residential neighborhood. Because, we realize that the residential zoning starts behind the property.
There may be restrictions. I'll have to look. I don't know off the top of my head. If there is any, it'll be from 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. But I'll have to see. Typically, that's with digital copy signs. That's not this. So I'll have to dig into it, but
Well, I would stipulate for the record that if there are any hours of operation signage, we will comply with that. So I want to make that clear in the record, that we're not asking for anything hours-wise that's different than your code ordinances.
Okay. And have the neighbors expressed any, residential neighbors expressed any concern?
There's a couple neighbors here, we can see what they have to say about it.
Okay.
I talked to the one gentleman earlier,
Okay.
asked a couple questions, and there was a question of non-signage that we're going to address.
Okay, I believe they'll have an opportunity to speak anyway. Okay,
I
thank
have
you.
not, no, sir.
Okay. So the total proposed signage is about 364 square feet, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
That's correct.
Those are no more questions, thank you.
Mr. Prill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, I echo the council's comments that this is a great presentation. I think I need some clarity on some things. Generally, when we get a package like this with all the details, we usually get a little box that says current code and proposed, and that's not here. So I want to walk through that with you right now.
That'd be fine.
If you don't mind. Okay?
Yep.
So what do you currently have there?
That's a good question. We did not, based on our conversation with Mr. Rowe, we didn't do a strict signage, because we may have been grandfathered on some of those things, I think to your point. We have the pylon sign. We have two signs very similar to the Outback that you see now. I think the major change is the Australia map. I think that the current package is similar in size to what we're asking for, but we're asking for the biggest square footage, as you see, is the Australia map. That's the biggest change from pre to post.
I took a photograph of it.
Yeah, but I don't know if the building elevations are totally different.
Yes.
Yes.
Right,
That's
so,
covered.
so let me ask you, when you say you don't want to affect the neighborhood, the neighborhoods in the back
Yep,
are residential, but you also have neighbors across Ridge Pike
right,
that are behind the business district.
yes.
And so I don't know how high this elevation is on the front of the building, or the pylon sign. Do you know how high the
Yes.
existing pylon sign is?
I do not, but the current one we're proposing is 20 feet in height.
I
which
understand that, I
meets your-
understand it. Did you go out to the property and do your due diligence?
The sign folks did. I do not have that information handy with me, sir. Do you have a picture of that?
The sign guys didn't prepare specs on all of this?
They gave us the new stuff. They did not give us the old one since it was a total scrape and
And
rebuild.
this is standard when someone comes in.
Yeah,
for
I don't
sign
disagree.
changes.
I don't disagree.
Just so you know.
Yeah, I agree.
We're missing some information here that I just like to, I'm not debating that I don't like what you're doing, and I
Yeah,
don't
no,
think it's
we're
very
well done.
palatable, but
Yeah.
it's missing some information, and
Correct.
I think it's reasonable information to ask for.
Absolutely.
So, you say the pylon is going to be 20 feet high.
Correct.
How far across the street will that show in the neighborhood across the street?
What do you mean by how far it is? Yeah.
Well, generally, like, when people ask for high signs,
Yep.
that usually projects out across neighborhoods, not just on the road there, right? And you have people that go to sleep at 10, 11 o'clock at night. So if the sign's on all night, they can't sleep. So this board has set restrictions on turning your lights off at a certain time for the residents to go to
Sure.
sleep. Okay, so that's probably going to be a definite.
Okay.
If I'm making the request, it's a definite, I can tell you that.
Gotcha.
But I'd just like to know, from your professional opinion, you're the sign guy, you're the engineer,
Yep.
how far does it project? I don't know, but you should, right?
Yeah, it's backlit. I mean, it all depends on, you can see it from quite a distance away. You know, I can't give you exact distance, but they're backlit. They don't project the light, so
Is it fair to say that it reaches the neighborhood across the street?
you'll be able to see it, yes, sir.
Okay, so we have to put a restriction on when that gets turned on.
That's fine.
The pylon sign.
Agreed.
Now, on the face of the building, you have new elevations.
Yes, sir.
Do you have any idea how high the existing front sign out back?
Yeah.
I mean, the Australian sign doesn't look like it's a bright sign, and it's
No,
on the
it's not.
side. I don't think that's the problem. I think the other issue that I have is the outback sign in the front, it's bright red. How high does it go, and how bright will it project? That's my biggest question,
They're all LED lightings these days, you know, it's all LED. as
which
you-
is brighter,
Yeah.
right? A little more annoying.
Well, it could be. It could be.
Great for marketing, don't
Yes.
get me wrong.
We do want to get the people in and out.
Absolutely.
Just getting back to what I mentioned earlier, sir, you know, we'll certainly comply with whatever the restrictions are in doing Mr. Rowe, you know, the sign permits are being issued. So we have no problem with whatever the standard is, whether it's 11 o'clock or whatever your ordinance stands by, we'll certainly comply with those.
Right, and I think Mr. Joel said he was going to review the ordinance, but
Right.
this board generally sets the requirement for a variance or a special exception.
Right.
Like, we'll usually say 10 or 11 o'clock because that's what time people go to sleep.
Sure.
You know, that's the time little kids go to bed. Little kids go to bed. Oh, wait,
Sure.
We're not looking to upset the neighborhood because of
Absolutely.
a bright sign.
Now, we want to be good neighbors. I would suggest that this board sees fit to set that restriction. I would ask that it be 11 o'clock, considering 10 or 11, because that's a normal time.
Do you know what time the hours are for the store, for the
They
restaurant?
generally close at 11
Okay,
on weekends.
okay.
Yeah, it says 9:30, yeah, 9:30 during the week and 10:30 on Saturday, Friday and Saturday.
So we can give them a half hour buffer on each, maybe 10 on the week, 11 on the weekends?
Sounds weird.
That would be great if you would see fit for that, sir.
Okay. And the only other question I had is like, all the signage adds up to 364?
It was 64.27.
Do you know what the calculation is that's, we obviously know.
We actually broke them down.
135 is the max, right? How much, based on your frontage, 160, and what was the frontage on Linda?
It's about 280 on Linda, 160 on Ridge Pike.
Any permitted illumination of signs.
So what's the allowable with that?
With the
Without
special-
the cap of 135? 135 is a cap,
The
right?
special exception takes us to 135. The variance kicks in between 135 up to where our application is. So with the special exception, you're at 135 based on the frontage. That's the maximum. We have more frontage than we can use for that calculation. So 135 is the max with the special exception. And that's why we asked for the variance also, to get us up to that 360.
This is from our website.
Okay, so,
Can I point one thing out, sir? Excuse me?
yeah, I'm confused on that. Can you provide a little bit of calculation detail so I understand it better?
Yes, so if you look at page 2 of the October 18th letter.
That- you might be
Mr. Rowe,
right.
Yeah, that's what I'm looking at.
Yeah.
Go
So
back to the website.
if you add up the pylon, the takeaway, and the
That's not
proprietor, that comes to 60.6 square feet.
Correct.
Then the two major outback signs are 72 feet each, and the Australian map is just shy of 160. So basically, what we're asking for, you know, including the special exception and the variance, is a total of about 300 square feet, of which over half is that Australian map.
Correct.
So So the pylon sign's 52, we have two small signs, a takeaway to direct you to the takeaway door, the tiny little proprietor sign, kind of insignificant. The two main signs are 72 and 72, the Outback Steakhouse, and the map itself is 159. So what we're asking relief from, basically over half of it is the map.
Okay, so let me ask you a question a different way, because you didn't answer my question.
Okay, fire
On
away.
page 1 of your letter, 1601.c.3
Yes.
A states, within that paragraph, you say, where there is a single business use, which you have,
Yes.
by allowing 1 square foot of sign area for every 2 feet of frontage in excess of 100 feet, but no event shall the total sign area or any lot exceed 135 feet. Now, that's what, how does that calculate to what you're doing?
Okay, so if we take that 110-foot number you referenced, in the front we have an additional 50 feet, okay? And the side we have an additional 170 feet. So if you take that 220 divided by 2, it's 110 additional square feet allowed by that calculation, okay? But we're capped at 135 already, so we're using the cap of 135. We would comply with more than that, but we're saying we're capping it at 135.
Okay.
So that's why I started with the 135 number. That's what gets us, we get to 135 with special exception, no more, because they cap it at 135. If we go by the footage thing you talked about, it'd be more than 135. So we cap it at 135, then we have to ask for the variance from 135 to the additional square footage to get to 360.
365. So the difference is what, 2 something, right?
Yeah, about 225.
Okay. And is that a special exception or a variance?
That's the variance part. The special exception gets us to the 135, okay? And then up to the 360, we have to ask for the variance between 135 and 360.
Does that sound right, Joel?
Yeah.
Okay. Great. No more questions.
Thank you.
So my only question is this a standard build like in other, do you do this in other areas?
Yes.
And is this pretty much exactly what you asked for?
Yeah, this is actually less than we do in some other areas. The one actually by where I live has more signage than this.
What is that?
In Harrisburg, it has more signage than this. We toned it down a little bit in this one because of the residential nature of the area. So see, this is a little less than standard sign package.
Okay. All right, no further questions. Mr. Solicitor, any questions?
No, I don't have any questions.
All right.
The board was very thorough.
All right, is there anybody in the audience that would like to, is for the application? Is there anybody against the application? Would anybody like to ask any questions or?
I just want to make sure, I've already talked to John a little bit about it.
Can you
Can you
You have to come in and get
state
sworn.
your name and
Sure.
I'll follow?
Name's David Palermo, Palermo. I live on 1950 Linda Drive. My only concern is pulling out Linda Drive now is like a kamikaze mission. It's
Going out on the ridge?
Yeah, because those people come, it's like a drag race. I mean, it's bad enough now. My only concern is, and John's mentioned about the signage, I wanted to make sure it's not going to be any bigger to impede, vision, because it's bad enough now. He's stating, I believe it's actually going to be taller, so it might actually alleviate some of it. So, I mean, he's kind of already answered my question, but I just wanted to make sure that's concerned.
Very good.
That's my major concern at this point.
I don't think it sounds like any of the new signage will create any different traffic
Correct.
hazards than are already there.
Agreed.
So,
He had a separate trash question, but we'll answer that outside this meeting.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And just to clarify, and this might help, you're not asking for any variances from line of sight? Like anything in the code, you're going to comply
No,
with?
sir.
Yeah. There you go.
Okay, that being said, would anybody like to make a motion?
I'll make a motion, Mr. Chairman, to allow a special exception from Plymouth Township zoning ordinance number 342 as amended, Article 16, Section 1601, point capital C, point capital 3, point lowercase a, and variance from Article 16, Section 1601, .C.1, special exception will allow 1 square foot of sign area for every 2 feet of sign frontage in excess of 100 feet, but not to exceed 135 square feet. The variance request is to allow the total sign area on a 1 street frontage of property in single and separate ownership involving a business so that it can exceed 65 square feet at a property located at 322 Ridge Pike in Commercial Zoning District. That all work is to be done in conformity with the testimony and exhibits offered at this meeting. The lighted signage will be turned off 30 minutes after closing each day. And the lighting will comply as necessary with the township lighting ordinance. Is it clear enough?
We have a second.
Second.
All right, roll call vote. Mr. Higgins.
In favor.
Mr. Dowd.
In favor.
Mr. April.
In favor.
And I also am in favor, so good luck with your new sign.
Well, thank you very much for your time tonight.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
And that being said, that's the end of the meeting.